Chapter 21 Echoes of the Empire. After a few days of wandering the streets of New York, soaking in the sights and sounds that make this city a living, breathing entity, I've come to see it in a new light. Terry, ever the historian among us, filled our walks with tales of New York's past, its architectural marvels, and the ghosts that linger in its shadows. It's fascinating, really, how this city pulls at you, alive or otherwise. New York, with its endless energy and towering skyline, is vastly different to the streets of Brixton and the historical depth of London that I remember. Where London has its centuries-old narratives etched into every cobblestone, New York feels like it's constantly rewriting its own story, building upon the old with a relentless drive towards the new. Yet, both cities share a gravitational pull, drawing in those seeking to leave their mark, including those who have left the physical world behind. Terry regaled us with stories of iconic buildings that once defined New York's skyline, structures that, while no longer physically present, continue to cast a long shadow over the city. The original Penn Station, with its grand arches and vast concourses, was a portal to countless journeys and stories. Its demolition was a blow to the city's soul, akin to the loss of London's Euston Arch. A piece of history erased in the name of progress. Yet, in our corner of the universe, these buildings persist, serving as waypoints for ghosts drawn to their historical significance. One particularly poignant tale was that of the Singer Building, once the world's tallest, now just a whisper among the city's many ghostly edifices. It's a reminder of the impermanence of man's creations in the face of time and change. This idea resonates with me, having seen the evolution of Brixton from a distance, its transformation a mix of growth and loss, much like New York's own architectural ballet. However, not all of New York's spectral landmarks are benign remnants of the past. The city, as Terry explained, has seen an uptick in misfit activity, and some ghost buildings bear the scars of these encounters. The Waldorf Astoria's ghostly counterpart, once a beacon of luxury, now stands inaccessible, sealed off after a misfit onslaught. It's a stark reminder that even in a city as vibrant as New York, there are shadows lurking, battles being fought beyond the perception of the living. This duality of New York as a haven for ghosts and battleground for misfits is a new concept for me. Brixton, with its own rich history and hauntings, feels worlds apart from the frenetic energy and hidden dangers of New York. Yet, there's a common thread that binds these cities, a sense of continuity, of stories unfolding across time, layer upon layer, visible only to those who know where to look. New York, with all its complexity and contradictions, has become a kind of mecca for ghosts from all walks of life. It's a place where history is palpable, where every street corner tells a story, and where the past and present collide in the most unexpected ways. As Terry, Sophie and I navigate this city, I can't help but feel a connection to both the living history around us and the spectral echoes that resonate just beneath the surface. In this city of endless possibilities, it's clear that the journey for us, the spectral inhabitants of New York, is just beginning. As we explore further, uncovering the layers of history and the hidden corners where ghosts gather, I'm reminded of the enduring power of place and memory. New York, like London, is a city that never truly let go of its past or its ghosts. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a final golden glow that seemed to cling desperately to the towering structures, the streets of New York began their transformation. The city's endless possibilities narrowed into more sinister prospects as night took hold, changing the rules of our ghostly engagements. The playful chatter of the living faded, replaced by the hum of the city's nocturnal life, less audible, but equally vibrant in its own cryptic way. The skyline, a jagged silhouette against the darkening sky, marked our progression deeper into the city's less frequented regions. Terry, Sophie and I exchanged wary glances, our early explorations a stark contrast to the urgency now pressing upon us. "We need to keep out of sight," Terry murmured, his voice barely a whisper, as if louder words might summon the dangers hidden in the city's shadows. Our steps quickened. We dodged into shadowed alleyways and across dimly lit streets, always keeping an eye out for the spectral landmarks that might offer sanctuary. Yet, every promising refuge seemed compromised, marked by the subtle disturbances that spoke of misfit presences. A flicker of movement just out the corner of the eye, a sudden drop in temperature, the distant clatter of something unnatural. The realization that we were not merely observers but participants in the city's hidden struggles weighed heavily on us. New York, with its pulsing energy and layers of history, now felt like a maze with traps laid by both man and spirit. Our search for a haven became more desperate as the shadows grew deeper, and the first stars blinked into existence overhead. "We're running out of time," Sophie hissed as another potential hiding spot, a small, forsaken park, shrouded in the remnants of the day's warmth, proved too exposed, too vulnerable to the prying eyes of the night's more malevolent watchers. With each failed attempt, the tension among us built, a tangible pressure against the encroaching night. The night deepened, and the streets of New York whispered with unseen currents of energy, ominous, yet alluring. As we pushed further into the city's dim recesses, our hurried steps melded with the rhythmic pulsing of the urban landscape, a syncopation marked by sporadic halos of street lamps and the occasional buzz of a flickering neon sign. The city's spectral denizens, hidden from the unseeing eyes of its living inhabitants, seemed to watch from every dark corner and hollow echo. Suddenly, Terry froze, his hand shooting out to hold us. "Wait," he breathed, his eyes narrowing towards a distant, darkened alley. There, the faint outlines of figures materialized, a trio of shadows that didn't fit with the typical ebb and flow of the city's nocturnal life. Their movements were too jerky, too deliberate, and an unsettling chill spread through the air, seeping into our bones, an unmistakable sign of misfit presence. We backed away slowly, our hearts pounding as we tried to put distance between us and the encroaching figures. But the city's maze of streets, so enticing by day, turned against us, each turn and twist bringing us unknowingly closer to our pursuers. The misfits, sensing our panic, quickened their pace, their forms becoming more distinct, a ghastly trio cloaked in the remnants of their tumultuous past lives, eyes hollow with insatiable hunger. "Our only chance is down," Sophie whispered urgently, her voice a mix of fear and determination. She pointed towards the nearest subway entrance, a gaping maw in the urban fabric that promised a temporary reprieve from our relentless pursuers. Without a word, we turned and dashed towards it. As we neared the entrance, a sharp, discordant laugh cut through the night air, a sound so at odds with the city's usual nocturne that it jolted us to our cores. The misfits were not just following, they were herding us, driving us exactly where they wanted. But with no better options than the subway entrance now just feet away, we plunged into the descending darkness, the city above fading into a muffled cacophony as we sought refuge in the underbelly of New York. The steep descent into the subway was a silent rush, our presence undetectable by the physical world yet deeply felt among ourselves. The damp air of the underground enveloped us, carrying the mixed scents of metal and electricity alongside the more elusive aroma of forgotten stories. Here, in the underbelly of New York, the usual rules of the surface world didn't apply, and the echoes of the past held more firmly. As we reached the bottom of the station, the distant city sounds faded into a vague hum, allowing us a brief moment of safety in the dim light of the subway platform. The overhead lights flickered, casting sporadic shadows along the grimy walls and adding to the eerie atmosphere. The remnants of the city's din seemed far away, yet the threat of the misfits was ever present, their malevolence undiminished by physical barriers. Sophie cast a nervous glance towards the dark tunnels, which seemed to gaze back with an ominous quiet. "They might still follow us down here," she murmured, her voice a whisper that blended with the soft hum of an approaching train. The vibration of the rails subtly altered the air around us, heralding the arrival of the subway car with a surge of displaced air. We stood aside, watching the train's passage, a fleeting moment of life that contrasted sharply with our spectral existence. As it roared into the station, the headlights sliced through the darkness, illuminating us momentarily. The platform sank back into a subdued quiet once the train departed, shrouded again in dim tranquility. Terry broke the silence, his voice firm despite our precarious situation. "Let's keep moving," he suggested, gesturing towards one of the darkened tunnel openings. "Deeper parts of the station might offer more cover, and if we're lucky, a way to elude them permanently." We moved cautiously, navigating deeper into the labyrinthine tunnels, our passage silent and unseen by any living observer. Each shadow and noise within the tunnel carried a potential threat, yet also conveyed a deep sense of history. Here in the veins of the city, the pulse of New York stories was palpable, recorded in weathered tiles, the layers of graffiti, and the abandoned tokens of daily commutes. Surrounded by these remnants, we were reminded of our own fleeting presence in this vast, resonant chamber of collective memory. We continued deeper into the subway, the dim lights of the platform fading behind us as we ventured into the less travelled corridors. The air grew cooler, the urban din above dwindling to a distant echo, replaced by the rhythmic dripping of water from the tunnel ceiling. Our surroundings grew increasingly oppressive, the weight of the city pressing down upon us with every step deeper into this subterranean labyrinth. Suddenly Sophie stopped, her expression tense. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her voice a hushed whisper that barely carried over the soft murmur of the tunnel. The rest of us paused, straining our ears, but heard nothing beyond the usual sounds of the underground. "Hear what?" Terry replied, his brow furrowed in concentration. Without answering, Sophie stamped her foot against the hard ground. To our astonishment, the sound echoed loudly through the tunnel, a clear, resonant thump that should have been impossible given our spectral forms. "That shouldn't be able to happen," I murmured, staring down at the ground, perplexed and unnerved. "Our interactions with the physical world are supposed to be non-existent." Terry nodded, a spark of recognition in his eyes. "Jasper did say this place was unpredictable," he recalled, referencing our old friend who'd spent decades navigating the spectral pathways of New York. "Maybe the tunnels hold the same kind of presence that the Adler Hotel and other ghostly landmarks have. A way of bringing some of the real world into our realm." The idea seemed to hang in the air among us. A new possibility that subway might be more than just a network of tunnels. It could be a conduit for something greater, a bridge between the physical and spectral worlds that was governed by its own set of mysterious rules. Encouraged by this revelation, we pushed forward with renewed purpose. The echo of Sophie's stamp still rang in our ears, a reminder that this place held secrets yet to be uncovered. As we delved further, the sense of history and memory in the tunnels grew more profound. Each tag on the walls, each abandoned token, felt like a whisper from the past, pulling us deeper into the heart of the city. As we continued deeper into the network of tunnels, the surroundings grew ever more claustrophobic, the air heavy with the scent of rust and the distant, incessant drip of water from unseen leaks. The flickering lights overhead cast ghostly shadows that seemed to flicker and dance with each passing draft. Sophie's observations about the echo had unsettled us, and we moved with heightened awareness, our senses attuned to any other anomalies that this strange environment might present. The heavy air seemed to press against us, a constant reminder of the city pulsing alive far above our heads. Suddenly, the distant rumble of another train approaching broke our concentration. We quickly found a narrow alcove and pressed ourselves against the cold, damp wall of the tunnel. The train roared past, a blur of light and sound that seemed to vibrate through our very essence. As it passed, I noticed something unusual, a lingering trail of energy that shimmered in the air behind it, like heat rising from hot pavement. "Did you see that?" I asked, pointing towards the fading glow. Terry and Sophie peered into the darkness, their faces a mixture of curiosity and confusion. Before they could respond, another train approached from the opposite direction. Again, we sheltered against the tunnel wall, watching closely as the train sped by. Just as before, a similar trail of energy followed it, swirling and twisting, before slowly dissipating into the surrounding darkness. "It's like the trains are dragging something along with them," Sophie murmured, her voice tinged with awe. As we pondered this phenomenon, a misfit, one of the three that had been pursuing us, emerged clumsily from a side passage. It seemed disoriented, its movements erratic. As it stumbled towards the tracks, it momentarily intersected with the lingering energy trail left by the train. The effect was immediate and startling. The misfit twitched violently, its form shimmering and then subtly shifting. For a moment, it appeared less threatening, its harsh, menacing features softening before it regained its balance and scurried away into the darkness. "That shouldn't be able to happen," I repeated, my voice low. The reality of what we'd just witnessed was sinking in. These energy trails, whatever they were, had an effect on the misfits, potentially a profound one. Terry nodded, his face serious. "Maybe these tunnels aren't just conduits for trains, but also some kind of spectral energy or memory from the city above. Like the Adler Hotel, these tunnels might bridge more than just physical spaces. They could be connecting past and present, affecting everything that comes through here." This new understanding of the subway's tunnels as more than just infrastructure, but as a dynamic, influential force in the spectral world, offered us both a weapon and a wonder. We realized that we might be able to use these energy trails to our advantage, potentially as a means to alter the misfits pursuing us, or at least defend ourselves. Having recognized the transformative power of the energy trails left by the subway trains, we quickly devised a plan to test this phenomenon further. The tension was palpable as we prepared, knowing the stakes were high. Sophie took up position further down the tunnel where she could keep watch for any other misfits or unexpected trains. Her role was critical. She would signal the train's approach by waving her arms, a clear and simple motion that we could all recognize, even in the dark. I was to act as the bait. The plan was simple yet fraught with danger. I positioned myself in a visible spot along the straight stretch of tunnel where the misfits had previously been sighted. My heart pounded as I waited in the dim light, every shadow seeming to twitch with potential threat. Terry, meanwhile, concealed himself in a nearby alcove just out of sight. From there he could intervene at the critical moment. We had discussed the timing at length. It had to be perfect to ensure the misfit was exactly in the path of the energy trail as the train passed. As the rumble of a distant train began to resonate through the tunnel, a shadow detached itself from the darkness. The misfit, drawn by my presence, moved with a jerky, unnatural gait towards me. I could almost feel the malevolent intent with which it advanced. I maintained my ground, my nerves stretched taut as the misfit closed in. Just as it reached a pre-marked spot on the grimy floor, Sophie's signal, a vigorous wave of her arms, caught my peripheral vision. The train was seconds away. With precise timing, Terry burst from his hiding spot. His action was swift and critical. As the train screamed into view, its light casting the eerie shadows ahead of it, Terry shoved the misfit forcefully into the path of the energy trail. The effect was instantaneous. The train's energy washed over the misfit like a tidal wave, its form contorted, caught in the throbbing pulse of the train's wake. When the train had passed and the energy dissipated, the misfit stood transformed. Gone was the menacing entity. In its place was a confused, harmless, dead guy, bewildered by his sudden clarity and the loss of his malevolent drive. We were astounded by the success, barely able to believe that our plan had worked. There was no time to dwell on our victory, though. We had to move quickly. I helped the bewildered ghost to his feet, guiding him away from the tracks. Terry joined us, and together we moved deeper into the tunnel, ready to repeat the process. Our strategy now proven, we felt a surge of hope. This subway, with its mysterious energy, might just be the key to turning the tide in our spectral battles within New York. Each step forward was charged with new possibilities. Our path lit not just by the flickering subway lights, but by the potential to bring change to the shadowy corners of the city.